everyone. My name is Davina San, and I'm a student here at Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida. With me is Dr. Lane Cohey, and we are so excited to share with you guys the new book that he wrote, which is The Disquieted Soul. And here's our Q&A. You've titled this chapter Pathology of Disquiet. What do you mean by pathology?
So pathology is just a fancy word for causes and effects. And what we do in the chapter is try to understand the environment. Why is it that people are struggling with disquiet? What are the symptoms? What are the causes? And so forth. And so we do a little diagnostics in this area.
Why do you think it's so hard, our culture especially, to have a quiet soul?
So we live in a very noisy culture, right? I mean, I think some would say frenetic, running around. And so it's very hard sometimes to have harmony in your soul in all the midst of the disharmony. And if you think particularly of all the addictions that are kind of beckoning, right? And we know about the standards, drugs and alcohol and screen time and porn and gaming and gambling, and you can go on and on and on. But there's other more subtle forms, which we talk a little bit more about in the book. The bottom line is it's very difficult, unless we're very intentional, to have quiet souls in the midst of that disquiet.
So you have a section called Demons of Disquiet, and I know you provide a visual diagram of that, but can you walk us through what that's all about?
Yeah, and let me just kind of talk to exactly what the book says there. So we start with threats. And threats are imagined or anticipated life events which have the potential to cause us pain. Now, of course, threats can come in a lot of different forms, not only physical but emotional, especially emotional. Shame-based feelings, rejection, devaluation, feelings of abandonment, the loss of personal security. And because disquieted souls are fueled by various combinations of shame and pride, we're really hypersensitive, I believe, to the emotional pain like ridicule and rejection and humiliation. So that's the threat. Dealing with the threat, a lot of times we naturally try to control our circumstances. Everybody tries to do that. But the disquieted soul is given to over-control. Because shame and pride are inherently self-protective, we go through very extreme lengths to try to anticipate and manage and control any threat that might bring us pain. And however, the worry and the anxiety and the obsessive behavior stemming from the over-control, it increases the disquiet. And the more we stress, the more we try to over-control. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. And so not surprisingly, a lot of us are not able to control all the circumstances. We just can't do it. And so the combined anxiety over threats and stress associated with over-control and feelings of helplessness often drive us into coping mechanisms. And these coping mechanisms are used to adapt or escape. And they can be substances like drugs and alcohol, process behaviors like sex, gambling, gaming, control behaviors like perfectionism. And perfectionism is a big one. But whatever form we choose, we're trying to avoid either anxiety on one hand or depression and despair on the other, and replacing it with something that offers an illusion of escape or control. And in the end, the coping mechanism itself kind of becomes our functional master. And we talk a lot about that in the next chapter.
I'm guessing that not everyone totally digests this visual. Can you give us a couple of examples?
Sure. In the book, I give like 7 different vignettes, but let's just take a few. So the first one is Randy. Randy is a very successful professional, but when he was growing up as a young boy, he had a learning disability, and so he struggled, and he was called stupid, and he was called slow, and he hears those voices, and those voices kind of haunted him. So what did he do? He worked harder than everybody else in order to be able to get to a position of success. But he still hears the voices. And so he continues to try to build kind of this perfect existence, a perfect family, perfect wife, perfect kids, perfect social media presence. Everything is perfection, right? But inside, he's constructed an entire perfectionistic existence, and he's in turmoil with regard to his disquieted soul.
And then we have Karen.
Right, and Karen is a high school senior. And she's a very good student, and she's particularly good at math and science. And so her parents want her to go do, math and science or engineering because that's where the money is at, right? But that's not what she wants to do. She wants to go into behavioral health and help people. And she's constantly hearing the voices of disapproval from her parents. Her parents don't approve, and she begins to slip more and more into despair, into despondency, with all of the voices and the disquiet.
And then we have a couple with Kelly and Jack.
Kelly and Jack. So Kelly and Jack have been married for 5 years, and and Jack is increasingly critical of Kelly, and she increasingly hears the pain of his criticisms. And she's always been in good physical condition and in good shape, but she's increasingly becoming aware of her body image, and so she begins to slip into laxatives and fasting and unhealthy eating disorders, which basically are the mark of her disquiet. All of these things have really one, a common pathology or a common pattern. Threats, oftentimes the things that we're hearing, the voices of other people, the way in which we try to control our circumstances in order to be able to deal with that. But ultimately, when we can't control, a lot of times slipping into some very dysfunctional, if not addictive behavior.
Wow, that's good.